I'm Matt.
I'm Kerry.
We are the Stagmer brothers, a Baltimore knife and sword. We're going to be building some of your favorite weapons, and some weapons that you've never seen before.
This is Man-at-Arms, REforged.
Upon seeing all the requests for the swords from Witcher 3, all I had to do was look at the box cover to realize they were swords we had to build.
Today we're going to be making the two most iconic swords from the new Witcher game. Since these are two very similar long swords, we're going to show you two very different processes. One's going to be forged and one's going to be CNC'd. So the first thing I got to do is draw the blade that's going to be CNC'd, and then we'll go from there. We're going to size it to about 35 inches, which is a pretty standard longsword blade. We're going to go ahead and get this one cut out first, and then when we go to forge the second blade, we'll try to match the dimensions. So the first thing Sam did was he forged a nub. That gives him a nice little area to hold with a pair of tongs to begin the forging. He's now going to the hammer using a hot cut tool and cutting the excess material away, allowing him to just draw the blade out from the leftover material. Using a hit turn technique, Sam begins to taper the bar out. Rotating your hot metal under the forge a quarter turn at a time allows you to keep it very symmetrical and keep everything nice and even. You can see this hammer makes really quick work of this. Not only is it really powerful, but also has a lot of finesse and control, so Sam's able to draw this blade out basically in one heat. He can now just go straight to the flat dies and flatten it out into a sword blade. This power hammer will make really quick work of this process.
For the pommel on one of the Witcher swords, we essentially have a wheel pommel that's going to get sculpted on one side. So I'm going to cut this piece of material for Ilya, and he's going to be able to cut it to shape using chisels.
We're now starting to forge the other pommel for the Witcher. First thing Ilya's got to do with either side of the bar is reduce the material slightly to start creating that leopard-like head. Ilya now moves to the vise, clamps the material by the snout, and uses a hot cut tool at an angle to create like the ear-like shapes. And he did a really freaking good job of it. I guess I shouldn't sound so surprised. He's now using that hot cut again to form the mouth. He's using the same tool to go ahead and cut the V-like shape for the nose. Now he switches to a chisel with a rounded edge. This is gonna start creating our eye sockets. You can see that we're rotating it a quarter turn each time. You don't wanna work one side more than the other, keep it even. We made a triangular shaped punch to do the texturing on the neck of the pommels. I assist Ilya using a pair of tongs, holding the head into the swage block as he lays in the detail. Now that we got a nice gentle bend in our pommel, we went ahead and quenched each head to cool it off a little bit to make sure that center area is hotter, so that's where the metal will move. We're now gonna crisp up that bend and then start building those heads over. After getting our pommel bent into a nice U shape, Ilya moves to the fly press. He could go to a power hammer or even the hydraulic press, but the fly press gives him a lot of control, allows him to shut it just right without getting any overlaps or cold shuts.
In keeping with the concept of one piece being forged to shape and one piece being machined to shape, I set this blade onto the milling machine. I'll be CNC carving the fullers into this. Matt will be forging and then grinding the ones in the other sword.
Now that we have the triple fullered blade for the silver sword, I can now start grinding my edges. I don't want to grind too much material off before heat treat, but I got to get it roughed in to save me a lot of time after we get it hardened. So I have to put a fuller in the forged blade that we did. I went ahead and used a Sharpie and just struck my center line. Just gonna help as a guide. If you ask 10 different sword makers how to put a fuller in a blade, they're probably gonna give you 10 different answers. In this case, I'm gonna use a narrow wheel on the grinder and I'm just gonna grind it right in. Initially, Ilya used a rounded offset tool to create that center section to ramp into the coin of the guard. He then just used another square offset tool just to crisp everything up. Now we're using a hot cut tool to cut off the excess material that we don't need on the end of that guard. He'll then flip it over to get more heat, draw out the other tine, and then hand it off to me for offset and twisting. I'm doing here is I'm just using the torch to heat a specific area that I'm then gonna lay in some twisting. Trying to get my heat as even as possible so when we do the twisting we don't have any tight or loose spots. I'm gonna use a pair of wrenches so that I put even torque on it, hopefully keep it straight, we don't get any lopsided twists. I've watched Kerry twist hundreds if not thousands of guards while working with him side by side over the years. It's not easy. You can get halfway through a project, get to the twisting and be overconfident and mess your whole piece up. For a hand-forged piece, I'd say that's not too bad. All right, we got both our guards forged to shape. Ilya forged this nice shape here. Got to true off a little bit to even the sides and then clean it up. From there, this one's pretty straightforward. It's now time to get our first guard fitted to the tang. John had to bend the tines of the guards out a little bit to be able to get in with the vertical mill. So now that we got our guard slotted and fitted to the tang, I can do some grinding on the center section here, which is called the coin block. The interesting thing about this sword is in all the game art, the center section changes. Some of it has no peak at all, some of it has a really tall peak. So what I'm gonna do is just leave it about where it's at, split the difference. Gonna go in here, clean this up, and then I'm gonna do some sculpting on the face.
From the first time we looked at doing the Witcher blades, we thought of Lewis Shaw. His handles look almost exactly like those in the game. We've brought him in, we're going to turn it all over to him.
Lewis is going to be not only making the handles for us, but he's also going to be doing the ferrules. The ferrules are the metal spacers that are in between the handle sections.
So these are the ferrules for the grips on the Witcher swords. I mark them in with the Dremel tool. I'll come back with the hacksaw. And now I'll come in and just gently round them over with the file. It's scintillating work, but it will have a really nice round over detail when I'm done.
Lewis has done hundreds, if not thousands, of these wire-wrapped handles. That's why he makes it look so easy. Trust me, from experience, I know it's not.
Ultimately, you want these wires to look like they're one single braid. In order to do that, you take two wires, twist them clockwise, another two wires, and twist them counterclockwise the same amount of times. For the black and silver Witcher sword, I'm using annealed steel wire. On the other one, I'll use copper. The annealed steel is fairly soft. That's going to allow me to chisel it down into the shape of the grip afterwards without it snapping. Because if the wire snaps 3/4 of the way through the process, I have to start all over again, and I do the very unhappy dance.
Ilya takes the wheel pommel that I prepared to carve the Witcher design. All of the tools he's using, he's made. He is almost completely self-taught. I've always said that drawing was one of the hardest parts of engraving, and he just makes it all look easy.
So I'm heat treating the first of the two Witcher blades. This is the triple fuller silver sword blade. I've got to watch my temperatures, keep the piece from warping very much. I'm running a fairly hot furnace with this material. After I make the quench into oil, the piece is pretty fragile until tempering, so we have to be careful how we handle it around the shop. So for the forged blade, this is W1 tool steel. We're going to go into the furnace. This is running a little bit hot for this material. So we're going to give it a minute or two to start to come up the temperature. I'll be flipping it, keeping it even like that. Then we're just going to turn the forge off and let the residual heat bring it up to temperature before we go to the quench.
Once again, we're tempering into canola oil. I'm just about 400 degrees here, and we're going to keep it in here for 2 hours. It'll then be pulled out, cleaned off, and polished.
So the blade's got its diamond cross section. We've blended the fullers out. It's at 80 grit. We're going to do 180, 280, Scotch Brite, and then everything else will be done in buffing. Then the blade will be finished and we'll just be mounting.
Kerry already ground the first blade using a nice flat grind. I'm going to show you guys something different and do a hollow grind, basically passing this blade horizontally across the edge of the wheel, and the radius of the wheel creates my edge.
I take both guards to the Scotch Brite. I'm going to be smoothing and finishing them before final polishing. I want to make sure that everything is ready to go. Building two swords at once for this episode was very difficult. But now with these swords in hand, I'll be able to keep the Northern Kingdom safe. Click here to subscribe, or click here to watch more episodes. Thanks for watching Man-at-Arms ReForged. We need to know what you want the guys to build, so tell us in the comments below what weapons you want to see next.